Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren Barva. I'm with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife Boating Access Grant Program. I am the Policy and Outreach Manager for the Watershed Restoration Grants Branch, which administers various grant programs for CDFW. With me today, I have Matt Wells, which is the branch chief for the Watershed Restoration Watershed Restoration Grants Branch. Before we get started, I have a few housekeeping items to go over. Please mute and turn off video to save bandwidth unless speaking. Please hold all questions until the question and comment section at the end. And also, this workshop is being recorded and will be made available on our website along with the presentation slides. So for today's workshop, we are going to provide an overview of CDFW's Boating Access Grant Program, talk about the basic requirements for the program, review the application process and the required attachments. We're also going to provide an overview of the application portal that we use, which is called Web Grants. And then we'll provide a tentative schedule for awarding projects, and then open it up for questions and answers at the end. So before I get into it, let's just talk about CDFW and boating access. So CDFW's mission is to manage California's diverse fish, wildlife, and plant resources and the habitats upon which they depend for their ecological values and their use and enjoyment by the public. In 2022, CDFW issued approximately 2 million fishing licenses throughout the state, and there is an estimated 4 million boaters in California. With all of this, recreational fishing is important socially, culturally, and economically. Therefore, creating a safe and reliable access for recreational boating is critical, and what CDFW's Boating Access Program is looking to achieve. A little bit of background on the program. So the Sport Fish Restoration Act, also known as SFRA, created the Sport Fish Restoration Grant Program administered by the United States Fish and Wildlife Service. The program provides funds to state fish and wildlife agencies for fishery projects, boating access, and aquatic education. The funding for this grant program comes through revenue from manufacturers, exercise taxes on sport fish, fishing equipment, import duties on fish tackle and pleasure boats, and a portion of gasoline fuel tax attributed to small engine and motorboats. CDFW receives the Boating Access sub-program from the Sport Fish Restoration Grant Program. And the Boating Access Program will provide federal funds for facilities that create and or add to public access for recreational boating and improvements to waterways that increase access to recreational boating opportunities. We receive an annual allocation of approximately $2 million from SFRA. This year, we will have up to about 8.6 million available. The 2023-2024 Boating Access Proposal Solicitation Notice outlines all of the program requirements for the solicitation cycle, including eligible activities, timelines, and the grant process. CDFW is looking for projects that will develop, renovate, maintain, or improve facilities that create or enhance public access to the waters of the United States, or advance the sustainability of these waters for recreational boating. Projects may include surveys for planning access to recreational waters for any size or type of recreational boat. Maintenance and operation projects can also be funded for boating access sites, facilities, and structures. Facilities funded through the program must be accessible to all recreational boaters, though the state might limit use for public safety, property protection, noise abatement, or aquatic resource protection. Examples of restrictions include, but are not limited to, boat motor power, speed limits, no wake zones, and hours of operations, etc. So the types of projects that are eligible for CDFW's boating access funds include planning projects, which can be planning, permitting, and design for boating access facilities. We'll also accept construction projects, which a few things to note here. The projects must be shovel ready, which means the design plans must be at a 65% design level or higher. Also, CEQA and NEPA must be satisfied at the time of award. And I'm going to go into the environmental compliance and permitting later. I just want to make that note. If a project qualifies for an exemption, we will want to see a notice of determination filed with the Office of Planning and Research. Some other project types are administration and coordination of boating access programs. So this can also include personnel, travel, training, and planning. But what we could like to see here are operation and maintenance of boating facilities, outreach to boaters about available boating access and amenities at the facility, aquatic invasive species information and education. In some instances, vegetation management if it's about keeping boaters accessing the water. We can also fund amenities for boaters at boating access facilities. So this may include restrooms, washdown stations, fish cleaning stations for boaters, ramps, courtesy or loading docks, maneuvering areas, parking areas, walkways, beaches, areas for boating, picnic tables, garbage facilities, shade structures, lighting, signage, all of that. Launching and landing facilities for paddlecraft and non-motorized boats. Outreach to boaters about available boating access and amenities. Pump out facilities for vessels that have onboard sanitary holding tanks. Fueling docks for boaters, potable water supplies for boaters, dinghy docks, and all of this includes compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act. So if you have a facility that's out of date with the ADA compliance, you can apply to us to bring your facilities up to code. So now we're going to talk about a few program requirements that I want to touch upon. The eligible entities that are allowed to apply under this solicitation are state and local government agencies, tribes, and nonprofit organizations. Federal agencies are not eligible to apply directly, but along with private entities may support projects as subcontractors. Another thing to note, we have a couple budget requirements. Since this is a federal program, there is a 25% cost share or match that's required for all projects. Also, this program follows the Title II Code of Federal Regulations, Part 200 for all of the fiscal requirements. So this allows the use of a federally negotiated indirect cost rate agreement. If you do not have a negotiated rate, then you would use the de minimis rate of 10% for all indirect costs. For environmental compliance and permitting, projects must comply with all applicable state, tribal, and federal environmental laws and regulations. And this includes the National Environmental Policy Act, which is NEPA. So projects coming through our funding will need NEPA and CEQA satisfied, if it's applicable to your project. And if it's a planning project, we can cover both of those costs for NEPA and CEQA. Applicants are responsible for obtaining all permits necessary to complete the project work. So now I'm going to kind of dive into the application process on how you apply. So the overall process starts with the submission of a proposal through CDFW Web Grants portal. And I'm going to go over the submission process later and actually how to walk you through our Web Grants system. But so once we receive all of the proposals, CDFW will review all proposals received by the deadline using a multi-step process, which starts with the admin review. The admin review will evaluate eligibility and completeness of the proposal. All proposals that are eligible and complete will then move to the technical review stage. Technical reviewers will evaluate the eligibility and completeness of the proposal, as well as, if needed, we would have our engineering review for any projects that are implementation and include design plans. Once all the proposals have been received, CDFW will select projects to be submitted to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. At this point, all applicants will receive a letter, and it will either be one of two. The first letter applicants could receive is letting you know your project was selected to move on to the next stage and is now being reviewed by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. If your project was not selected, you will also receive a letter letting you know that you were not selected to move on to the next stage. Once proposals have been selected and sent over to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, they may have some additional questions. And if that is the case, we will reach out to the applicant and let you know if U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service does have any questions about your project. Once U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service approves the projects, CDFW will then send out an award letter and start the grant agreement development process. I am going to talk about the timeline later for this process, later on in this workshop, and I'll go over all the different times. So now let's talk about all of the documents that are needed for applying. All proposal templates and attachments are available on CDFW's voting access webpage, and I will drop a link in the chat so you guys can have access to that. The Web Grants application Word document is going to show all of the items that will need to be filled out within our Web Grants system. So our system uses a combination of fill-in multiple choice questions as well as attachments. So the Web Grants Word doc is going to show you what you will need to fill in the system. All the others are going to be attachments. The second one is the project narrative template. This is the meat of our application. I'm going to go over this template in detail on the next slide, but this is where you would describe the project in detail, and this is one of the required attachments. The project statement guide is a reference guide for the project narrative template. It will help you fill out the narrative template and answer any questions you might have. We have 2 budget templates. Since there is a 25% cost share or match is required, the type of match you have will decide which template you will use. So we have a staff match Excel sheet or a cash match Excel sheet. So you need to submit at least one based on the type of match you have. The next one is the Bald and Golden Eagle Protection Act compliance document. This is required if it's applicable. This document is needed if there's any potential for eagles within a 10-mile radius of the project. Additional information can be found within the document. Next is the Endangered Species Act, or the ESA evaluation form. This document is required for all projects, and this form also has additional information that can be found within the form on how to fill it out. The last document is the NEPA checklist, which is if applicable. Okay, so now on to the project narrative. I want to spend time going through this document because this is where you're going to describe your project to us. It's broken out into 9 sections. I'm going to briefly go over each section, but the project narrative template does include additional information on how to fill out the template, and we are working on getting some examples of the narrative posted on our website. So the project narrative starts with the introduction. This is where we want you to briefly describe the proposed project and any history or special circumstances important to understanding the project. The second part is the need. Tell us why the project is necessary. For the purpose and objective section, state the purpose and objectives and base them on the need. The purpose states the desired outcome for the proposed project in general or abstract terms. The objectives state the desired outcome of the proposed project in terms that are specific and quantified. What would be accomplished during the grant period pursuant to the need? The objectives must meet 3 criteria. Specify what would be accomplished within the grant period, money or both federal and non-federal if you have any, and staffing allocated. The second is we want to specify a recognizable endpoint, which would be your end date. And the third would be quantifiable or verifiable measure. How are you going to verify or quantify the objectives? One thing that will help with this section, within this section, we'll use the TRACS performance matrix to define strategies and standard objectives for the project. I have a link in this PowerPoint presentation that will go directly to the TRACS matrix, and it's also included within the narrative template. There is also an example within our narrative template on how to fill out this section. But one thing you need to focus on is looking at this TRACS matrix and connecting it to your strategies and standard objectives. The approach should describe the methods used to achieve the stated objectives individually. So how will the objectives or objectives be obtained? Each objective should list a corresponding approach identified by an objective number. So you'll list objective 1, objective 2, and objective 3. For the results or benefits, describe the results or benefits of the accomplishing the project objectives, especially as they relate to the specific purpose of or the goal of the program that you're applying to. So ours would be boating access. And then we have just geographic location. Where will the work be done? This is where we'll describe the state, county, or specific boundaries of the project. There's also a budget narrative. This is where we want to see the connection between the Excel budget, and think of this as your budget justification. Next is the timeline. This is where we want to see all the activities that are intended to occur during the life of the project. And then finally, environmental compliance. This is where you'll provide any information relevant to ensuring compliance with all applicable state and federal laws. So now that we talked about the application and what is included within the application, Let's talk about how to apply. So all proposals must be electronically submitted through CDFW's Web Grants online application platform. Proposals must be received before 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on November 3rd, 2023. These next few slides, I'm going to discuss the Web Grant system and how to submit an application. If you haven't worked in our system before, it can get kind of confusing. So Web Grant setup. A few important items about our Web Grants user accounts. You cannot apply to the PSN without an active Web Grants user account. Multiple users can work on the same application, but must have their own user account and must be associated with the same organization. So once you sign up, you would select organization and our Web Grants team can connect you so you can both work on the same application. Returning applicants, you do not have to re-register. Use your existing ID and password. If you changed organizations, please contact our Web Grants help desk and to affiliate your account with a different organization. And then if you're new, please register. And if you are new, this is where you would click on the registration here link right below the California Department of Fish and Wildlife logo. On the registration form for new users, all fields marked with an asterisk are required. Please do not provide any personal contact information, business contact information only. Also, at this stage, the organization tax ID is not necessary, but if you have it available, please include it. If not, you would just enter NA. The tax information does get verified before we enter into a grant agreement. Some more on the registration process. This is how we determine eligibility based on the organization that you are affiliated with. If you are affiliated with more than one organization, register under one and contact the Web Grants Help Desk to link additional organizations to your account. Third-party users, such as consultants, should be affiliated with the applicant organization. The Web Grants admin must approve the registration before the user may log in and start the application. So when confirming your registration, the user will receive up to 3 confirmation emails. Your first one is going to be your confirmation receipt. The second is going to be your approval deny user registration. And then the third one will be a password. On average, the registration approval time is about 1 business day. So once you're registered and in the system, in order to get to the voting access application, what you're going to do is log in and then click on funding opportunities. From there, you'll have a pop-up and it will list all of the open opportunities available to apply for. On this one, we are going to select 2023 SFRA Voting Access Solicitation. Once you select that, there's 2 options for the application. There's start a new application or copy an existing. Since this is a new process in our system, you'll select start a new application. Once you select start new application, this page automatically opens up. So this page must be filled out and saved before the rest of the application can be complete. This is just all of our general information. The primary contact is the only user that can update this general information section. Please keep the project title brief. We also use this project title for your grant agreement as well. The authorized official and an authorized representative of the applicant organization must be affiliated with the applicant organization. For organizations, you can only select organizations that your account is linked to. Also, make sure you select Save before leaving this page. After you filled out the general information form, you will come to the applicant main menu. All application forms are listed in the application main menu at the bottom. Use this as your checklist for completing the proposal. All forms must be complete before you can submit. Most of our voting access proposal is all attachments. There are only 2 forms that need to be completed within Web Grants, which is the general information form, which you would have completed prior to getting to this section. So then the only other one you'll need to complete is the proposal application. This includes general information about the applicant who is submitting the proposal and general project information such as project amount, start end dates, project type, counties, and things like that. So once you're ready and click on the application proposal, this screen is going to pop up. I'm going to quickly walk through these slides, and then if you have any additional questions, we can answer them later. So once you get to this form, you won't be able to edit the page until you click on Edit in the upper corner. This will take you to the screen where you can go in and edit. Make sure you click Save, and then that will take you back to the form where you can go back and make additional edits, or there's 2 options to get back to the main menu. The first is to go to the application forms. This will take you back to the main menu. The second option is to mark as complete. So once you filled out your form and you're done, and you don't need to go in and edit it again, you want to make sure you mark this form as complete, because all the forms will need to be marked as complete before you can submit your application. And then you will use the edit, save, mark complete process for all of our forms except for the attachment checklist, which is what I'm going to show you right now. So once you select the attachment checklist, the edit button is going to be grayed out. So if you were to go to it, you won't see it. You're going to have to scroll all the way down to the bottom and click on the attachment name. Once you click on that attachment name, another screen is going to pop up and it's going to give you the ability to upload the file. So once you upload the file, you'll hit save and complete this process until all attachments have been uploaded. Now, once all your attachments have been uploaded, all of your forms are marked as complete, make sure you go and review the application before you click submit, because once you click submit, we cannot go back and change anything within the application. So that was a quick summary of Web Grants, and our Web Grants team is available if you guys run into any questions while you're filling out the application. For the timeline for this solicitation, all proposals are due November 3rd of 2023. We will have the proposal evaluation between November 2023 and January 2024. We anticipate award announcements coming either spring or summer of 2024. That delay between when we evaluate them and when we have the award announcements is for U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to review and approve the projects. So we anticipate having executed agreements in summer of 2024 with all project work and deliverables and final invoices to be sent in March of 2028. Now, so CDFW coordinates closely with California State Parks Division of Boating and Waterways, who also provides funding for similar boating access projects. I do want to note that we can co-fund projects, and CDF or Division of Boating and Waterways funding may be used as cost match for our program. And you can visit all of the programs that they have available at their website, dbw.ca.gov. Here is our contact information. You can access the Boating Access team at boatingaccess@wildlife.ca.gov. If you have web grants or application questions, they're available Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. at CDFW webgrants@wildlife.ca.gov. So now I'm going to open it up for Q&A. Questions asked today will also be summarized and included in an FAQ document that we will post on our website, along with the recording of this presentation and the PowerPoint slides. If you have a question or a comment, please submit the question through the chat or raise your hand. You will be called upon to ask your question, or we will read the question aloud.
Lauren, I don't know if you're looking at the chats yet, but there's a couple. Both are asking about, well, the first two are asking about if there's minimum or maximum award amount or request requirements. No, there are not.
Our only limitation is the amount of funding we have available.
And then there's a question, as part of maintenance, is dredging a permissible project?
We've talked about this, and I think we would need to know more information about what type of dredging. Are you dredging around the ramp? Are you dredging in channel? There's some other questions I think I would have to determine. If you're dredging a big shipment channel, it might not be eligible, but if you're just cleaning out area for recreational boating access, it is a possibility. Municipal marina. We might need to look into that one.
Yeah, I think it's something we could look into for sure.
Yeah. I'll add that. We'll mark that question and add that in our FAQ. Would improvements to a fishing pier or a new fishing pier be an eligible activity? Yes. Does there have to be a nexus to motorized boats, or are projects that focus on solely on non-motorized boating eligible? Yes. So motorized and non-motorized boats are eligible.
And I think definitely, as part of this process, we're interested in hearing more about project ideas and getting a better sense of projects that people are thinking about. This is a program that we're starting to administer, so some of this is newer to us in terms of types of projects we see. There's a couple more questions. How many applications are typically received and receive funding? That's sort of an unknown. We're administering this program, taking it over, so it depends on availability of funding. Are funds only reimbursable, or can they be awarded? So I think what that question is asking is, can we provide all the money up front or advance the funding? And the answer is no. These are reimbursable agreements. So the grantee would submit an invoice for reimbursement, and we would pay that invoice with a pretty quick turnaround. And those can be submitted as frequently as monthly as needed.
Mhm.
Is it possible to apply for a planning project for a boat ramp design and an amenities for boaters, restrooms, etc. project under a single application? Yes.
Yeah.
Are applications for consulting fees eligible? I think we'd have to see more about that and the context of the project.
And then we have a hand up. TVRPD.
Hi, we are a parks district that runs a campground on a reservoir. The reservoir is owned by the water district, not by us. Can we still apply?
Yes.
A couple more in the chat. Does the NEPA need to be complete by application or time of award? Just confirming I heard correctly. What is the time of award?
Time of award. So we would want to see where you're at in your process, in your application. And this would be something that U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service would want additional information on. So if you are currently in the process and you anticipate it being complete in April or May, put that in, and then we would confirm that before time of award if the project got selected.
Go ahead.
I say, will this be a recurring funding opportunity? Yes, we will be receiving $2 million annually moving forward.
Is the 75% guaranteed based on the estimate, or will that amount be determined after the project is complete? So it's based on what's put in the proposal. So we will issue an award for a set amount based on the proposal. And that will include an overview of the total of the project. So I think that's kind of getting at the question, but it's based on what's in the proposal. Do you have scoring criteria or advice on what types of projects or project elements would be more competitive? Really, we won't know how projects compete with each other until we see all the applications, but we have $8.6 million available, and we're looking for projects that really check the box of improving, creating voting access. So in terms of what's more competitive, is tough to say until we see all the applications. Regarding consulting fees, this would be for CEQA, which will be required for the entire project. So if you're asking whether or not you can submit a project for consulting, a standalone project request for consulting, I don't think that's eligible. But if consulting fees or fees associated with completing CEQA are included in a proposal, I think that's eligible. Then see, Lauren, you want to take this one? Can you talk a bit more about what is required from applicants at the time of application for planning / permitting and design awards?
So for planning, we want to know what your project will be planning for and what some of their objectives are. If you identified permits that you're going to need, let us know. And for design awards, you could be waiting on some permits to be complete while you come to us for implementation and design. If that kind of makes sense, if that's what you're getting at. Planning, we can cover CEQA, NEPA, and permitting. When it comes to design and implementation, we can hold off on awarding until your CEQA and NEPA has been satisfied. Permitting can still be coming because we can award with some permits still outstanding. We just want to make sure that you've submitted those permits. If that kind of helps answer your question. And if you have specific questions, feel free to email us and we can talk about your specific project and what's needed.
What types of activities for AIS education and outreach might be eligible for reimbursement, e.g. watercraft inspections, decontaminations, travel expenses, labor, equipment, inspection stations, etc.?
For education and outreach, yes. I think I want to hear about your project before answering that question. I think that's more project specific.
Could this grant program be used to expand upon activities related to a program already funded through a grant? To be more specific, we have a watercraft inspection program that's currently funded through DFW, but hoping to use this new grant opportunity to expand the program and seek reimbursement for some of the staff costs associated with the program. I think generally speaking, yes, we can supplement and augment the cost of an existing project and would like to do that. And as Lauren mentioned, state funding available from Division of Boating and Waterways, given that federal funding has a 25% match requirement. We're hoping projects can leverage existing funding to meet that match. So we would like to see a scenario like this for sure. State Parks leases land from PG&E to provide boating access facilities at a couple of our parks. Could improvements to these facilities be eligible? Is there a minimum term required for the lease?
We'll have to check in on the minimum term for the lease requirements with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service if they do have any. But if it is a state park that has leased land, state park would be the applicant. So therefore state parks would be eligible. PG&E couldn't apply for this funding, but state parks could. We'll just need to confirm the leased information and whether or not, if there are any limits on the term.
When there was a question, in order to enter our property, we have to pay. Would that exclude us? I think if there's an entry fee for a site, I don't think that excludes you. It's still publicly accessible. I think a lot of boat ramps and types of those places would charge an entry or parking fee. A lot of good questions from this group.
Yeah.
And I think that the other thing I would add too is as you think of these questions or you didn't really get to kind of drill down to the level of detail, this is not your last chance to ask these questions. We want folks to engage as they apply and work on applications. And if it makes sense to have a conversation, we can do that. To the extent possible, we'd like to get out and see proposed projects. So we're happy to engage with folks on that front. Can we reach out later for advice on developing the tracks?
Yes. Yeah. you can, because that can be kind of confusing and it is part of the requirements. I try to provide as much information as possible within the narrative and using of the matrix. But yes, if you have any questions, feel free to email votingaccess@wildlife.ca.gov. I think that's it. We'll stick around if you guys have any additional questions.
Thanks, everyone. Can we replace an existing boat ramp? Yes, absolutely. The presentation will be posted on our website. For project questions, email the boating access email address, boatingaccess@wildlife.ca. If you have a technical question about using web grants or the application, use CDFW web grants.